All right, so we'll admit the students now.
Perfect. Hello.
Hey everyone, good afternoon.
How are we doing, guys? Go ahead. Work on the poll questions per usual. We'll let people trickle in here and then we will get after it. Hello. Okay, we're all trickling in. Look at it. Everyone's face is getting smaller. That's a good sign. There's more little boxes. Feel free, answer the poll questions as you trickle in here and get our head wrapped around our topic for today, which is going to be grit and resilience. And I know, Basha, did you want to go ahead? I see a couple more people in the waiting room popping in, but you can make your announcement once they're kind of all settled here.
All right, so thank you so much, Haley. So, hi guys, thank you for joining our workshop today. I just want to have some quick reminders. So, please turn on your cameras, make sure that we are seeing your beautiful faces, and attendance points only go to those who are visible to the facilitator. And then, if you guys are part of the alumni, please put alumni before your name. And if you're a student leader, please put SL before your name. And for the rest, make sure that you are using your full name as your display name in Zoom. And also, just a reminder for everyone to please make sure to turn in your workbook and survey form every Friday, or the deadline is on Friday at 5 p.m. So that's it. Thank you so much, Haley.
And even better if we can just get it all done in this session and then you don't have to worry
Yes.
about a deadline. Okay, I think we have 93% completion of the poll. So we can go ahead and chat through this. So like I said, we're going to talk about grit and resilience today. This shows up in a lot of different facets of our world, particularly the big things that are important to us that we are trying to accomplish. But it's not all, obviously, when it comes to resilience, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. So if we're looking at these poll questions, when stress hits, what helps you bounce back the most? We have a 50-50 split. Half of us like to take a break or to rest. The other half of us like to talk to somebody that they trust. Um, Reframing the challenge, ignoring it, moving on, not our most popular choices. And that's all good. I think um honestly in reality, like we're all probably doing some combination of these things, right? Um, Number two, which area of your life could you use more grit or consistency? Schoolwork is our biggest answer. That makes a lot of sense. Fitness or health is 25%. Hobbies and skills and relationships or teamwork were both 13%. So, um, think about like whatever area of life kind of percolated to the surface as you were answering this. Keep that kind of in the back of your head. We'll revisit that with some workbook questions today and like apply some of the stuff directly to those scenarios. If you could improve one skill for resilience, what would it be? The majority of us said keeping motivation over time, and staying calm under pressure and believing in yourself more. Those were the top three. Um, I love the note on keeping motivation over time. I think that's like the toughest piece to crack. And I think really being very clear with ourselves around what we are trying to create, not what we're trying to get away from, not framing it in a negative, but like being able to paint a really clear picture for ourselves of like, this is the reality that I want to create for myself, and being, whether that's around schoolwork or fitness or a hobby, um, having that vision for ourselves can be really helpful when it comes to being able to stay consistent, because we need that thing to anchor back to. And oftentimes, when we are doing things just for the sake of escaping a stress or we want a problem to go away, it becomes very hard to do that consistently over time. But we're going to get into all of it in more detail. But that would be my first personal, in my experience, that's been a huge unlocking move for me, is just making sure that I know, like, what is the thing that I really want? And it's not going to be perfect all the time, and those things don't happen in one day. But if I can just keep thinking about what is the life that I want, what's the thing that I want to create, that helps me keep all of those habits consistent. So, with that, we can pull up the slides for today. We can get into grit and resilience. But before I just get way on my high horse and we get like so into grit and resilience, let's briefly look at what we touched on last week. So if we want to go and remember, we talked about being decision architects. We did the menu, when we did the menu breakout, where half of us were salad people and half of us were hamburger people, and it was those external factors that nudged us in one direction or another. And then we looked at, okay, how can I use that reality that my environment is important actually to my advantage? And how can we integrate some of those positive nudges into our life? So I'm curious if anyone has an example of a nudge that they were able to implement for themselves, or do you just remember one of the nudges or one of the things that we talked about last week that can help us make decisions easier for ourselves? What do we remember from last week? Or what did we apply from last week? Do we remember the decisions that we were hoping to make easier? Who remembers one nudge from last week? One thing that we could do to set our environment up so that it was easier to make good decisions? Someone's got something. I'm giving it a minute to all come back to us. Color was talked about. Yes, we talked about that in relation to the menu, right? And um, how different colors, like, oh, if I know that I am attracted to a certain color, then that is like on some level informing. I think we talked about flowers, right? It's like, oh, I saw the flower of the color that I liked, and like that made it so much more instinctive for me to want to go and make that purchase. Yeah, that was a great example that we talked about. Does anyone else remember anything that we talked about from last week? One nudge or anything around decision making that surprised you? Yeah, Genesis.
Yeah, I think a nudge I talked about with my group was to kind of like separate yourself where there's a lot of technology where you can
Mm-hmm.
easily be influenced by what they show there.
100%. In so many ways, right? Like One, like we're all being bombarded with advertisements and influence all the time, and recognizing that like that is on some level, it is informing what we want to purchase, what we want to be around, what we think is important, and so that's certainly a component. Um, and just being very cognizant of that, right? Okay. Remember, we can simplify our decisions. I think was it see, I can't even remember. Steve Jobs last week where we're like, oh, he wears the same thing every single day. It's like he has eliminated choice. He just has one, there's not even a choice. He's just already made the decision. Most of us are probably not going to do that. That's a little bit extreme. But there's other types of scenarios. Maybe it's not what we were, but there's other types of scenarios where we can almost make it like a non-choice. We talked about the importance of like what's like what's in your visual line of sight. If we have healthy snacks out on our kitchen counter, are we more inclined to eat them than if they're tucked away somewhere, right? And so what can we do to make the choices that we want to make even easier and more visible? So those were some of the examples that we talked about. Okay. With that, we are going to move into grit and resilience. Does anybody want to read this first learning objective for us? Yeah, Lizzie.
Um, Grit is developed through long-term passion and perserve perseverance, um, with constant effort being more crucial for achievement than talent or brief motivation.
Yes, we want like grit is long term, right? Like that's implied. It's not about one off. I'm doing something with like crazy intensity. It's about how do we do these things consistently over time? Little bits consistently over time is going to help us develop grit. Who wants to read bullet point number 2? Yeah, Ariel. And
Explore how resilience develops through setbacks, optimism, and a growth mindset, and learn how reframing challenges can strengthen confidence and persistence.
100%. It doesn't take a lot of resilience when everything just works out perfectly the first time, right? The resilience comes from, oh, this thing didn't quite go the way that I wanted, but I'm not gonna let it totally get me down. I'm gonna stay optimistic. I'm gonna think about what I can learn and what I can do differently, and we come back with more information and more experience. Catherine, did you want to read the third one for us?
Yeah, I could read it. Um, Build grit and resilience by setting long-term goals, reframing failure as feedback, and developing small, consistent habits for growth.
Beautiful. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So again, as we're chatting through, think about what are some situations or goals that you have that are long term that you know it's going to take a little bit of grit and resilience to actually accomplish them. And we will be looking at the tactics and the strategies that we can use to develop that over time. Okay, let's go to the first slide. So, grit equals passion and perseverance over time. I was thinking about grit and resilience a lot this week. And I'm like, what is a good which example from my life feels like it would be worth sharing? And honestly, the first one that came to mind was from back when I was in high school. Um, I played softball when I was younger, and when I was a freshman in high school, I was like 4'9" and I was really scrawny. And but I played and I had to like have really good form and I worked really hard. Um and I remember my freshman year I made the JV team and I was like so upset. And the head coach pulled me aside one day and he was like, I was shocked you actually could throw a ball. I assumed you wouldn't be able to. I looked at you and I thought you weren't going to be able to. And that really shocked me. But I just don't know if you're big enough. And I don't know if we have a spot for you. and they put me on JV. And I saw all of my friends that I played with that I knew I was at their level. They were on varsity, and I was like, okay, that's a bummer. Came back sophomore year. Came back sophomore year, and they put me on JV a second time. And I was like, okay, this is happened a second time. I I think it was I switched high schools at that point. Was still working in the background with my competitive team. And at the same time that all of this was going on, my freshman year, I was on a competitive team with, and I wasn't doing that great. It was like I had coaches, like I was playing the wrong positions. I had coaches that didn't know the type of stuff that I was working on. Um, and I was like really getting down on myself. And it was somewhere between my sophomore and my junior year, I switched teams and I went to work with a coach that like totally understood what I was good at. She understood what my strengths are and what I needed to work on. And she like totally believed in me. And I just doubled down and worked really we worked a lot. Like she had played college, she played softball in college and she like knew what it took and she was like you're gonna play in college and I'm like okay well I got put on JV twice in high school so we'll see how that goes but I knew I was playing at that level and that I could do it and eventually I did end up going to a D1 school to play and I when I was playing at that D1 school in the fall I think of my freshman year of college the high school coach from my first high school was actually an umpire at our game. It was like the craziest thing. I was out of state. So it's like he came out of state and he's like umpiring a college game in the fall and he didn't recognize me at all. He asked me if I had a sister because he recognized my last name was the same as my little sister's last name, who he had put her on varsity. He never put me on varsity. And he said, do you know Megan? And I was like, yep, that's my sister. And I'm like, he doesn't even remember me. He doesn't remember that he put me on JV twice. Um, but I got up to bat and I remember getting a hit and I got on first base and it just felt like such a like moment where it was like I put in so much time and I got rejected multiple times by this person and I just kept working and I found a new coach and I ended up going to a school that was like bigger than any school that anybody that he put on JV went to. And so it was like very much a moment where I was like not everyone needs to believe in you. You just need to believe in yourself and like find and surround yourself with people that can help and support you and see what you're going after. And it was very much a full circle moment there, but that was like probably the earliest and most significant because it was over many, many years that I was like really committed to figuring out how to play in college. And it was not easy. There was a lot of failure. There was a lot of tears. I was like, I definitely had very high expectations for myself, but I think this idea of thinking about grit as passion and perseverance over time, like that was the example that I think really, one of the couple of examples that I think really stands out to me, where it's like it was so important to me, but it took a lot of, it didn't happen overnight. I didn't fail once, I didn't fail twice. It was multiple times over multiple years. Um, and it wasn't even, I even say failure and like it wasn't a failure to get put on JV by any stretch. But I felt like I wasn't where I wanted to be yet. And so there was always that vision of that thing that I wanted that was driving me. Um, so that's really when we talk about grit, it's like that's what it's about having the discipline to like know that you care about something and just keep showing up for it. Um, and when we think about grit, it's like one of the reasons why we say that it's a predictor of success is because a lot of those successes don't happen overnight. Like, I mean, I think people often talk about the idea of like the overnight success. Like, it's never really overnight. All the overnight successes that you see are people who have been working in the background for years and years and years, and then they just had an opportunity and they were able to capitalize on it. So knowing that like if there's any big things that we are looking to achieve, we need to have grit and the ability to keep showing up in order to realize them. Also, the next piece that we want to cover, passion requires direction. So if I was just passionate and I was like, yeah, I want to go play in university. I want to play at a Division 1 level. And I just was passionate about it, but I didn't have support. I didn't have a coach who was able to help me or people who are able to guide me in a certain direction or tell me what I needed to do to get there, then I could have all the passion in the world, but I needed the parameters and I needed the guardrails in order to be successful. Um, Effort is a huge piece of this, right? In two different ways that I want us to talk about. One, we have to have, when we have a natural talent and then we put effort in, that's how we develop a skill. Talent by itself will only get you so far, but it's when you apply it over time and practice it. Okay, now I've created a skill that is like, that's something that I can do. When I take that skill and I put more effort into utilizing that skill, that's when we get to achievement. And so just recognizing that effort is one of these things that feeds us multiple times over, and it's something that's 100% controllable. We can always control how much effort we put into something. And so recognizing it and being able to double down on that is going to take us really, really far. And then the last piece of this is consistency over intensity. So if I cared really, really, really hard about making a team, but I only cared about it for 1 month, I probably wouldn't have made very much progress, right? It's about being able to say, okay, it wasn't about, I could practice literally every single day for 8 hours a day for a month, and I would probably make progress there, but it's not the same as saying, I'm going to practice consistently over multiple years. There's going to be so much growth that happens. It's really similar. This is going to be a weird callback. Very similar to the budgeting, the compound interest that we talked about, right? It's like you get the growth that happens when you're able to do something consistently over time is really, really pronounced. And so when we are thinking about these big things, it's really easy to get excited and to feel really motivated right off the bat and feel like I'm going to go 0 to 100 and do all of these things. And we will always get better results when we think about what is the stuff that I can do sustainably and consistently over time, because it's that consistency that will always pay off more for us in the long run than doing anything super intensely for a short amount of time. That was a lot of me talking. What questions do you have? What comments? What are your guys's thoughts on grit in general? Is this something that you've been introduced to? Do you feel like you have seen other people who have embodied grit? Do you feel like you've been able to embody grit at some point when it came to a certain goal? You guys got to hear my story. I feel like I want to hear your story. Yeah, Lizzie.
Hmm. Overall, I feel like um I learned grit through my friends because um I feel like I've been not self-taught but by taught by others on how they react on things and how much effort they put into things that are important to them. Like for example, I used to not put enough effort into school, but then when I realized how much and how important it was and the amount of grit and effort that was put into school by my friends, I started to put that into myself.
Hmm. I love that. I love how you talked about, oh, when I realized the importance of it. Like when we talk about passion, that's what that means, right? It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, there is a re I understand the reason behind why behind it. I know that this is important to me. It's something that I really value. And then the effort piece is like the perseverance. So I think that's a great example. Anyone else have an example of where they've seen grit or where maybe they've personally experienced it? Or people in their orbit have displayed grit? Passion plus perseverance. You can also drop it in the chat. Yeah, Dante.
Um, the sport I did in freshman year is called cross country.
Hmm.
When I first did it, I didn't realize how hard it was going to be, but and at first I wasn't so good. Like it was really hard, but I don't know why, but I kept going to practices, even though the first one was really hard. And then I just got a lot better, and I've been doing it for sophomore and junior year. And
That's, go
at
ahead.
first, I didn't want to do it in junior year because like in sophomore year, I had a really bad experience with it. But I decided that I could at least like maybe put in effort, but not to an extent where I hated the sport,
Hmm.
so I could still do it without being miserable.
Yeah, that's a great example, especially cross country. I don't know how anyone runs cross country. That's amazing. I'm such a bad runner, so anyone who is like has developed the skill of running, I am like so in awe of you. Yeah, that's a great example of like it doesn't, that's not something that's easy the first time. You have to keep showing up um before you really like get into the flow and can see yourself improving. So that's a great example. Anyone else? Yeah, Genesis.
Um, Maybe this isn't a good example, but I just wanted to comment on like the importance of passion within grit because okay, say, well, I was a gymnast for around 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
starting like since I was like very little. But the thing is, like, even though like I've been constantly going to practice, which I think was around 9 to 10 hours a week,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's I still wasn't like the best in it because I wasn't passionate about gymnastics. It was just a sports that my parents put me into. So in order for you to like actually see the results in grit, you need to be passionate about something and actually put the effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I wanted to say.
No, that's a great example. And I think like tying, being able to tie that back to effort, there's a difference when we are doing something and we're just going through the motions or we're just trying to make it wait out a clock versus like this thing is important to me and so I'm showing up for it. And again, that goes back so much to like mindset and things of that nature where it's like the time might, to your point, the time commitment might be the same, but the way that we're internalizing it and the like real effort that we're putting in that window of time can make such a difference in terms of how much grit we develop and how much achievement we might end up having. So I think that's a great example. Okay. We're gonna, now that we have our juices flowing, we are gonna work on a workbook question. Once we wrap up this workbook question, you guys will go into breakouts and talk about what you wrote down. So be prepared. But I want you guys to think about a time, something that you've stuck with over time. So what helped you to, I want you to think about what helped you stay consistent even when maybe that initial excitement faded. Um, so we'll try to identify some moments where we feel like we've had a little bit of grit in that way, and specifically that could been able, like, trying to stay consistent with something over a longer stretch of time. Make sense? Okay. Go ahead and work on that. Okay, so we're gonna go into breakouts for a couple of minutes. Go ahead, share with your group what you came up with, and you can see if anything that other people share like clicks with you or resonates, or sparks any new ideas for you.
I'm opening the breakout rooms now. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone have an example from their breakout rooms that really stood out to them? Or that really resonated, maybe when someone else shared it? Yeah, me.
I would go.
Oh,
Um, so one person said that like it was like being consistent on sports and like it made them like they did sports their whole life like and they made them consistent like because they were able to see their achievements and everything. And I highly agree with that because like I have been playing tennis for like maybe 5 years or so, and like seeing the achievements and like the titles that I have like gotten like helped me make like stay more consistent in practicing and showing up.
I love that. It's a great example. Mia, did you have an example?
It was the same thing. We were in the same
Oh,
breakout. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Anyone else? Yeah, Amber. Oh,
Um, sorry. So I know someone in my group, they talked about being like in a sport and how even though like the sport really tired them a lot, like what kept them going was just knowing that it was gonna be over. And I think honestly, like sometimes you're thinking like, oh, like what got me through was just being happy about it, but someone doesn't always have to be happy about it. It might just be better to like look forward to when it's ending, and I think that's totally okay.
100%. I think that's a great example. And also, again, like we can derive happiness from different, it could maybe we can it might not be our favorite thing to do, but you can still be proud of yourself for showing up and doing it, right? And like how much extra grit is involved when you have to do a thing and maybe you're not in the headspace for it and maybe it doesn't feel easy that day. It's like I think about all of the softball practices I've been through in my life, which is a lot. I was not like skipping to practice every day. That's not that was not always the energy, right? Like some days you're excited for it, some days it's gonna feel like a little bit of a slog. But that's where the grit comes in, right? It's like, oh, can we keep showing up for ourselves even when everything isn't perfect and it maybe doesn't feel like it's the thing that I exactly want to do today. And then we prove to ourselves that we will show up for ourselves, and I think there's something really important to be said for that. And speaking of that, we can go to the next slide and look at resilience. So again, all of these examples that we're using to talk about grit are not examples where something was super easy. If I was like, yeah, I tried out for tried out for the team and made it varsity my freshman year and made varsity every year and like went to school, it was, no issues. That was not grit. That would have just been that would have been easy. And some things do come easy, and that's great. But we don't need in those moments we don't need grit. And I think the most worthwhile stuff and typically the biggest stuff does not come easily like that, right? And so there is an element of resilience that we need to have because we need to be able to bounce back. Um, when we don't feel our best or when we hit a setback, we need to be able to say, okay, I didn't make the team that I wanted, and I'm going to show up to every practice and I'm going to make myself better. Or maybe I didn't get the grade that I wanted on that test. And it's like, it doesn't mean I'm gonna give up. That's a grade that I didn't get on a test, that's not the grade that I wanted. But how can I keep showing up and keep putting in consistent effort and consistent repetition over time so that I can keep improving, right? Um, so it's like grit is really, it is about having the resilience, especially in the moments where things aren't easy. That's where this really shines and becomes so, so important. So a few things that can help us build resilience is one, anchoring back to all of the growth mindset stuff that we've talked about. Again, the growth mindset at its core is the belief that I can continue to grow and get better if I put in the work and I get guidance. None of us are stuck at a certain level with anything. We can always improve. And knowing that I can always improve, and when there is a mistake or a setback, when we're in a growth mindset, we're asking ourselves, what can I do differently? And what can I learn from this? We're looking for opportunities to continue to learn and grow, even in moments when things maybe aren't going perfectly. And that is very much uh, all coming back from Carol Dweck's work that we talked about, right? Optimism is also, I think, something that's probably a little bit underrated. So when we are optimistic, when we look, if we're able to look a little bit more on the brighter side, we tend to recover faster, right? We tend to be able to bounce back. Maybe it's with sports, maybe it's with a test, maybe it's with some sort of like hobby or extracurricular activity. But if we can think about, okay, what's the optimistic take here? And we can look at the glass half full, that's going to help us be more resilient. Stress inoculation. So that's kind of a big word, but basically, how do we reframe stress as a challenge? It's not a threat. Just because I'm stressed out about something doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. It means that I'm about to be. I was in a class earlier today teaching, and I asked how everybody was doing. I'm like, how is everyone doing? And everyone's like, we're a little stressed. And I'm like, okay, well, that means that I would be concerned if we weren't stressed at all, because it would mean that nothing's happening. Stress can sometimes be a good thing, right? It's a cue that, like, okay, we're doing something new or different, or we're pushing ourselves. Now, we don't want to be in like panic mode. Okay, if we get like way, way too stressed, then that's different. And we want to like use that and check in with that and make some adjustments if we need to, right? But generally being able to say, you know what, just because I'm stressed, that means that I care and that I'm challenging myself. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Um, and also, I think this last one is really often underrated. Looking at just look for stories of resilience. There are stories all over the place. And I think sometimes it's really easy to get down on ourselves. And when we can look at stories of how other people were able to bounce back for things, it just feels more achievable. I told my sad little story about about not making the team that I wanted in college. Michael Jordan also got cut fully from his high school basketball team. Michael Jordan. That's crazy, right? But it's like again, we have all it is about being able to keep showing up for ourselves and being consistent over time, right? Okay. With that, we're going to move into our next workbook question. I want you to think of a time that you failed at something that you felt was important. How did you respond in that moment? And what would you do differently with a growth mindset? So again, growth mindset, we're thinking about what can I learn? What can I do? It's the understanding that I can always grow and get better if I put in the effort. Okay, go ahead and work on that for a couple minutes. Does anyone have an example that they want to share? Yeah, Mia.
An example I have is that I failed at meeting my expectations for my PSAT last semester, and
Mm-hmm.
that really broke me because I really expected more for myself. But what I did differently, with the growth mindset, was to look for like practice tests so I could constantly take one like every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks so my mind can stay fresh. So when I take the real SAT, I can achieve my goal or higher.
I love that. That is a great example. And that will lead us perfectly into our next slide, which is really looking at how do we build grit and how do we build resilience in our own life. So, first and foremost, if we want to build grit and resilience, let's focus on one topic at a time, right? So maybe it's your SAT score, maybe it's a sport, maybe it's a grade in a class, maybe there's some sort of personal goal. We want to stick with one challenge and we want to stick with it for like at least a few months, right? So, um, just continuing to really remind ourselves that doing something consistently is always going to be better than intensity, right? Mia saying every 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to take a practice test. That consistency is going to pay off way more than if a week before the SAT, she decided, I'm going to cram and I'm going to do 15 practice tests in 1 week. It wouldn't have the same impact. It's about doing things consistently over time. So I want you guys to think about what is one challenge that you can stick with, and like how do you want to track that? I love tracking. I love checking things off a list or marking things on a calendar, or keeping things in a journal, like something so that you can actually see that you're being consistent with that challenge. So that's step number one. We also want to be able to reframe our failure as feedback. So again, it's not that because this one thing didn't go my way means that I'm a failure. We always want to think about what can I learn, right? That's the growth mindset. And the idea of like, I'm just not there yet. I have this goal. I'm just not there yet. What is, and always really be thinking about when we hit a failure, what is something that you learned from that challenge? What's something that you learned from that experience? That allows us to make sure that we're staying in a growth mindset and that even when something doesn't go our way, we're still gaining something from it because we are learning. The last thing that we want to do is experience a failure and then not learn anything from it. Then we're really leaving opportunity on the table, right? And then the last and like really important one that we want to really touch on today is really thinking about small, consistent habits. Even tiny habits, right? They don't need to be anything crazy. It can be doing something for 10 minutes a day. Or if you want to read more, it's like I'm gonna read 3 pages a day. It doesn't have to be, I would rather us think about what is something no, the hiccups. What is something tiny and consistent that I can do that will help me to grow more in the long run versus, again, we don't need to go for intensity. We want to go for consistency. Some of like the best ways in my experience to build those consistent habits is I think we talked about this in one of the weeks, but habit stacking. So if there's something that you know you already do every single day, can you build on top of that habit? So if I know that every single day, the first thing I do in the morning is brush my teeth, well, maybe I'm going to brush my teeth and then I know right away I'm going to read those 3 pages of my book. I don't know. I don't know if that one makes sense, but you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I'm gonna eat my breakfast every day. I'm gonna eat my breakfast, then I'm gonna read those 3 pages of my book, whatever it is, right? So if we can stack some of these habits on top of each other, it can often make it easier. Does that make sense as the 3 strategies for building a little bit more resilience in our day-to-day? Okay. We are going to, I believe, go to the next workbook question there. So I want you guys to apply this to yourself. So I want you to think about one area in your life where you want to be more consistent or more resilient, and think about what is one small action that you can take every day to move forward. And how are you going to remind yourself to keep going even when it gets hard? That's where the grit comes in, right? So spend 90 seconds, identify your area of focus, your daily action, and how you're going to stay consistent. Okay. We are going to go into breakouts here for a couple of minutes, and I want you guys to share with each other what you came up with for this workbook question.
All right, I'm
How
opening the breakout rooms.
beautiful. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are we feeling about what we came up with, our area of focus and our daily action? Go ahead and throw it in the chat. 8, 9, 8, 7, 8, 7, 8, 7. Great. I love it. I love it. Does anyone want to share what they are going to commit to as their daily action? Yeah, Diana.
Um, I put my area of focus is turning in work, and then my daily action will be is staying on top of my work, like looking what I have to do, and then I will stay consistent by reminding myself and thinking about how my action might affect my grade.
I love it. Anyone else want to share? Yeah, Jessica.
I put that some a place where I want to be more consistent is exercising because I feel like I should do it more often. Uh, for My daily action, I put that I can probably put it in my schedule, fit it in, based on like what other things I have to do. And one way I can stay consistent is keeping myself accountable, um, for like making myself feel better in general, because I feel like exercising makes me feel good and
Mhm.
energized.
Totally. Yeah, and like finding like a form of exercise that is enjoyable and that like you like to do. Yeah, those are great examples. Okay. Let's keep moving because we're about to wrap up here. Next class, we are going to cover something called the four agreements, which are four agreements that we can make with ourselves to have better communication and stronger relationships and more resilience and all of that good stuff. So we will get into those four agreements next week. And with that, I think we'll do 90 seconds. Maybe we do 60 seconds to wrap up with our workbook and that survey. So see if we can't get that wrapped up here before we finish class today. Okay. Beautiful. Remember, if you did not get that submitted, make sure to do that by Friday very quickly. These are the same announcements as last week. There is an Ignite speaker series coming up on the 2nd. The RSVP deadline is in 2 days. So Friday at 5 p.m. if you want to attend that. Remember, you get extra points. So if you were absent for a class, that's a great way to make up points. You guys have the World Cup Symposium on March 15th. Your RSVP deadline is March 6th. And for anyone in 12th grade, remember the Rotary Club of Los Angeles is doing a scholarship, and you can apply for that by March 2nd. So feel free to hang out and ask questions if you need any more information on those things. But thank you so much, and I will see you guys next Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Haley.